Are you using an offer strategy to help secure your listings? Like, what's your plan when you actually get an offer? What if you get multiple offers? How are you going to handle that when you are the listing agent? I like to take that strategy and leverage it to impress my sellers. And it communicates to them how professional, how I'm an expert, the skills that I have to not only market their home, but manage the other agents in the transaction. So let's talk about that, how you can leverage your listing offer strategy to get more listings. Welcome to the Savvy Agent Podcast, where we help real estate agents build a thriving business so they have financial freedom in their life without having to work 24/7. I'm your host, Heather Wright. Now let's get to it. I had a trainer once who loved to say how spray and pray is not a good marketing strategy for your listings, where you spray it, you post your listing everywhere, and then you pray that somebody shows it and you get an offer. And the spray and pray is also not a good strategy when it comes to managing your listings, because in today's crazy market, and hopefully your market is good, and maybe it's not super crazy where you're getting tons of offers on every listing, but hopefully your market is healthy enough that your listings are not sitting on the market for 6 months before they're selling. And if they are, you should email me, podcast@savvyagent.co, and I will pivot and come up with ways you can leverage those situations to help you. But this episode is about leveraging your listing offer strategy. So what is your strategy? If you list a house for sale at 10 a.m. on Tuesday and somebody writes an offer at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, what's your strategy? Are you going to present that offer? Probably, because of course that is the law. We all have to follow all of the laws, but are you going to recommend to your seller that they accept that very first offer an hour after it was listed? I tell my sellers, listen, if I sold your house in the first 5 minutes that it was listed, you'd probably be happy. But then later, when you woke up at 2 a.m, you couldn't sleep, you would probably be wondering, couldn't we have gotten more money if we had maybe just waited a little bit longer? So when you sell it right away, you're probably leaving money on the table. And so I explain that, that's how I leverage my listing offer strategy, by explaining the timeline that I like to follow. If it is going to be a decent listing, and you can usually tell if it's going to be a listing that's exciting. Sometimes I might not be super sure on the price. Maybe I know we've probably priced it a little bit too high, but you can get a pretty good reaction in the first few hours that the property is on the market, in my market anyway. And so having those conversations in advance with your seller to get them to be on board with your strategy, because they do have some choices that they need to make. If they're in a situation where they do need to sell in the first 5 minutes, then I would probably explain all of their choices, but recommend, now because you have a subject to sale on this other house, we need an offer quickly. And so here is our strategy to make that happen. And then what are you going to do to get them a quick offer? You probably have people that you're networking with. You probably have advertising and marketing strategies that you're going to employ to make sure that the listing gets maximum exposure right away. But what if they don't have to sell fast? That's where they get their choices. Would you like to evaluate every offer as it comes in? Or are you thinking that maybe you want to have an offer review period 2 or 3 days after it's been listed and collect any offers and review them all at that time? I do like the offer review period because you can also schedule when you want to work. So how about we review offers at noon on Friday, and we'll have a response back to everybody by 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. Just for an example time, then I know I can look at my calendar and I know I'm going to be working on Friday at noon. That way I don't have to work offers at 10 o'clock at night, because my brain just doesn't work well at 10 o'clock at night, but it works great at noon on any day. I'm pretty sure I have another podcast episode on why I love the offer review period and all of the benefits to that. And I'll link that in the show notes. So on top of all of the good reasons to do that, what's your plan to organize any offers that you have? How are you going to recommend which offer they should pick? Now, recently, I listed a property, I thought at market value, but pricing is hard. And we ended up getting 17 offers. we did have an offer review period. It's bank owned. It was a foreclosure. And we had an offer review period. We listed it on Friday and said that, it's a bank. They're not going to work over the weekend. So we will review all offers, have your offers in by Sunday night. I'll review them with the bank Monday morning. We'll have a response back to everybody by noon. 17 offers is a little bit much to manage. So I have a multiple offer spreadsheet that it is a resource available in Savvy Agent Club, but it is like normally I look at my estimate of proceeds vertically. So it's just a spreadsheet that goes up and down with the costs and expenses for selling the house. But that doesn't really work when you're looking at many offers on one property. So I created a multiple offer spreadsheet to look at everything horizontally. So I can compare and contrast a lot of offers on one screen without having to scroll up and down. And so then of the 17 offers that we had, I had it all organized, and highlighted what the things that were great. Of course, price is going to stick out, an escalation clause is going to stick out, no inspection is going to stick out. And so we ended up having 3 offers that were definite leaders over all of the other offers. And all 3 of them were very similar, where they also had escalation clauses. And the escalation clause is kind of a gray area, isn't it? Where it doesn't, at least in my market, the escalation clause doesn't really spell out exactly how it's going to work. Now, of course, we know that, if the escalation is, I'll pay you $2,000 more than a competing offer up to this amount. But what if you have 3 escalations? Do you escalate just one time? Do they continuously ping pong off each other, escalating the escalation? Or do they escalate on the max escalation price on all of them? There's no rules. And I'm sure somebody would disagree with whatever I chose. So I talked about those options with the bank, the decision maker, and he decided. So I gave my recommendations. Here are all of the things that you could do right now. These are the leading offers. These are the ones that I recommend that we pay some extra attention to. You could accept one of them. You could counter offer one or more of them individually. You could go back and ask them all for highest and best. You could do a number of things. And so that's actually the option that they decided. They said, okay, we'll reject everybody but these 3 offers and tell them we want their highest and best. And so that's what we did. And he was very, very pleased with the outcome of this particular listing. Now, when it came to the pricing of that was also part of the strategy, to handle the offers, because while I said I thought it was market value, my market came in like 200 to 230,000. And the 230, it just felt too high because there were less comparables supporting that. And you know how it goes when you have a market, you just kind of have to pluck a number from the sky. And so I gave him 2 choices, or I gave him 3 choices. I said, we can list it on the high end at 230. That might be too high. I'd rather see you listed around 200 to 204,000, but maybe you don't like that. And maybe you would just like to list it at 215,000, which is right smack in the middle of these 2 recommendations. And so the seller chose to list it at 200. And we ended up getting the 17 offers. So he was able to make that selection that he wanted maximum exposure, and it worked out really, really well for everybody. All of these agents had the opportunity to show the house. All of these buyers had the opportunity to put their best foot forward. And then I gave everybody feedback after the fact of it's been a couple of weeks now since I did this, so I'm trying to remember, but I gave everybody feedback. I sent everyone an email letting them know that, hey, we received 17 offers. At the time I wrote the email, it was 16 offers. And then right when we're negotiating the top 3, a 17th offer came in. So we ended up having the 17 offers, and I explained that the things that were important to the bank was obviously the price. And in this case, I think it was primarily the price. I think most people had a home inspection. Only like one person had waived their inspection. So that was really the money is what they were making their decision on, because the money was so high. It was so much higher on the winning offer that the inspection didn't really matter, because they'd all, I know what it was. They all did buyer's knowledge only inspections. So it was kind of like, these are all equal. I hate buyer's knowledge only inspections, but whatever. So, I gave that feedback out. So then the agents who did not win had something to share with their clients so that they at least didn't feel like it was personal. They didn't think it was their agent's fault. They hopefully got some coaching on how they could do it better the next time. And then I had a set time to meet with the seller. And I recommend that too. If you know that noon is when you're going to review those offers, are you going to meet at noon or are you going to meet at 1:00? Because maybe you need time to organize those offers. So having a plan for every aspect of how you're going to get the offers is really important. And I think if you share that at your listing appointment, that's going to set you apart from the competition, because I don't think people are talking about this. I don't think people are actually doing this a lot in their business. They're not really considering it. At the end of last year, just a few short months ago, it was harder than hell to sell any listings. Like the market kind of turned off in the third week of September 2022, and it didn't turn back on until like middle of January 2023. And so having a listing on the market, we were reminded how much it sucks when your listings don't sell in the first couple of days. And so we had to create new habits and refresh our memories on how to actually market listings and how to set seller expectations. So are you doing that for the market that you're in? Because it might feel like it's kind of easy to sell a house in this market when you're getting 17 offers if you price it right, or if you price it to get 17 offers. But it's not easy. Like going through 17 offers, that's a lot. So yes, I'm going to tell that story to the next seller. Yes, they're going to understand that that's a gigantic pain in the ass and it's hard work. And I wouldn't want just anybody doing that for my biggest investment. And I'm also going to share the flip side. I'm going to share how sometimes we mess up the price. Sometimes we read the market wrong. Sometimes our timing stinks. And so that's certainly a possibility, that just because we have an offer review period doesn't mean you're going to get 17 offers. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you're choosing to list this at the premium price range of the market analysis, which I fully support, because if I sell your house in the first 5 minutes, you're going to wonder if you could have gotten more money. And the answer to that question is probably yes. So if we're going to wait a couple of days before we review any offers, there is a risk that no one is going to write an offer. And that's okay, because if they're not going to write an offer for a review period, they weren't going to write an offer in the first 5 minutes anyway. So we're testing the market to see how they respond to the price and setting those expectations up front, like our strategy for not only marketing, but for handling the management of the listing, is going to help us not only secure that listing, but it's also going to help us manage the seller in that listing. And then we can leverage it for more listings in the future as we share our experience with other people. And for example, today I visited my dad. He was at work and I stopped in to pick something up from him. And he was telling me a story about Lance. Lance is some guy I'm apparently supposed to know from dad's work. I've never heard of Lance, but Lance apparently is moving. He's getting transferred to another state. And so dad says, oh, he already had a realtor from when he moved here before I had a chance to tell him about you. Okay, thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. And so anyway, my dad is telling me that, yeah, can you believe this realtor? She started during COVID. Like, well, if she started during COVID, she probably has lots of experience at this point. So she started during COVID, which is apparently a negative in my dad's opinion. I think everything is a negative in my dad's opinion. But so anyway, she started during COVID. And can you believe that she told Lance that if his house didn't sell in 7 days, they were going to talk about a price reduction? Like, yeah, dude, seriously, that's how it goes. If your house is still on the market in 7 days, you probably priced it too high. So I tell all of my sellers exactly what to expect in that process, that listen, we're going to test the market on the high side. If we put an offer review period on there, great. Here's what's going to happen if we get offers. Here's what's going to happen if we don't get offers. And then we're going to continue testing the market if we don't accept an offer during that time. And after a week, 7 to 10 days, we should have a pretty good estimate of how the market is responding to us, unless it's a weird time of year. A weird time of year for me would be the Iowa State Fair. I'm in Iowa. The state fair is a big deal here. I'm not a state fair person, but I'm in the minority. Many people love the Iowa State Fair, and it goes on for 10 days in August. And I swear to God, nothing else happens during the Iowa State Fair. Real estate comes to a dead halt. Now, of course, there's sales here and there, but it is dead. And then after the state fair, You have back to school shopping. You have people finishing their end of summer vacations. You have school starting. School starts usually now at the end of August. I don't know. Honestly, it kind of seems like it starts right after the state fair, but there's so much going on and it's hotter than hell. So if I listed a house, and I have made this mistake many times, and I'm sure I'll do it again, when you list a house in Des Moines, Iowa in August, sometimes nothing happens. And so that's a great example of how timing matters. And if I knew that that was the timing, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a price reduction until after Labor Day, because I wouldn't want to waste it when no one's really looking at real estate until after Labor Day. So I would explain that to my seller up front, that here's how it works. And then now thinking about this, like my dad is alarmed that 7 days is a long time. I'm like, well, his agent is totally right. And I would say the same exact thing to him, but somehow it's going from the agent to Lance to my dad. And it kind of sounds like nobody believes in what that agent is saying. So there needs to be more conversation up front to let them know this is what's happening in our market. So this is what our plan is. And here's why. Maybe show some examples on your market analysis. You probably have days on market. You probably could show them what we don't want to do is price it so high that we have to have 6 months of price reductions before somebody actually buys, because we all know that, of course, you're never going to get what you should have got in the first place if you screw it up to begin with. But Lance didn't know. And so he's going to work complaining to everybody else. And my dad is probably saying, well, you should have hired Heather because she wouldn't do that, when in fact I would. But that is one way to leverage your listing, all of your listing strategies related to your offers, because isn't that the name of the game? You want an offer on that house, and everything you do is related to that. So how can you leverage your listing offer strategy to not only win the listing appointment, but then have such satisfied customers that they give you amazing referrals, glowing review, and then they use you again and again and keep giving you referrals. And then you use their situation, the actions that you take on that listing, you use that as a case study on your next listing. Let me tell you the story of when I listed Lance's house and he was pissed at me at 7 days asking for a price reduction. I know there's a flurry of activity when you win the listing and you get it and you're doing all of these things, but don't overlook the need to have a strategy, and then don't overlook the need to share that strategy with your clients, both when you're trying to win them as clients and then when they are your clients, because that will eliminate a lot of possible issues that you run into in the future. So that's my story, a couple stories within a story for today's episode on leveraging your listing offer strategy. Hopefully you got some good nuggets out of that, and I'll talk with you next week. Have a good one.